Hello everybody, and welcome back to Cam Critiques. The Dynasty Warriors franchise and the Fire Emblem franchise always seem like they'd fit together perfectly. However, when the original Fire Emblem Warriors title released back in 2017, it was pretty underwhelming. While I enjoyed how it brought more of the position-focused strategy Fire Emblem is known for into the Dynasty Warriors franchise, I was underwhelmed by the incredibly lackluster roster and repetitive gameplay. Since then, Koei Tecmo have changed their approach to their Musou crossover titles, focusing on emulating big single-player experiences from popular games, while including many mechanics from Dynasty Warriors as opposed to shoving characters from different franchises into a standard Warriors game. We saw it with Persona 5 Strikers, and we saw it with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. And now, once again, we've seen it with Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. Instead of being a celebration of all things Fire Emblem, 3 Hopes is Omega Force's take on what Fire Emblem Three Houses could be with Warrior-style gameplay. And it's fantastic. This game takes place in an alternate timeline of sorts. It's set in Fodlan, and it centers around a version of Three Houses' Central War. But, instead of Byleth becoming a professor, they stay a mercenary, and even pop up as an adversary throughout the game. Instead, you start as Shez, a wholly new character who, through a series of unlikely events, becomes a student at Garreg Mach, Byleth's workplace throughout the first part of Three Houses. Taking the place of Sothis, Byleth's mystical companion who grants them mysterious powers, is Arvel, a similarly mysterious companion who grants Shez powers much more fitting for a Warriors title. Aside from those two, the cast is comprised of characters you come to know throughout Three Houses' 3 roots. All of the students at the center of the original title are fleshed out here, but some side characters are given a lot more time in the spotlight as well. I played Claudru, Golden Wildfire, and I was surprised to see how much focus Hulse, Hilda's brother, was given. The cast is just as great as it was in Three Houses. Everybody seems accurate to their prior portrayal, and the new characters fit right in as well. The whole cast is well fleshed out, with all new support conversations, of which there are many, conversations between major battles, and even the return of paralog battles, optional missions that act as side stories that focus on certain units. The cast is likable, diverse, and deep, and the story they drive is fantastic as well. I really enjoyed my time with Fire Emblem Three Houses, though I had a lot of problems with the overarching plot. I don't want to go too deep into spoilers, but the whole conceit of the war was questionable at best. Some individuals did some terrible things that went unaddressed. The evil force seemed a bit out of place, and house leaders made some choices that seemed to conflict with their beliefs for the sake of the story progressing. I loved the world and the cast, but the whole conflict wasn't executed particularly well. Somewhat shockingly, Three Hopes tells a much better war story. Every bad or questionable decision made is properly addressed. Every choice made has an appropriate argument behind it. The evil forces play a larger role in tying to the plot in a more poignant way. And the viewpoint on how war affects its participants and the citizens that live around it is much further explored. I felt like this game went out of its way to point out some of the flaws with how war was treated by our allies in the original. Again, I don't want to spoil too much, but I left Three Houses not sold on a ton of decisions all the leaders of the forces in the war made. In Three Hopes, I could see where every side was coming from, and I was constantly excited to see what would happen next. I wasn't sure about Shez, the new protagonist, going into this game. I thought they might feel out of place. I mean, their design already looks a little out of place with their neon purple hair. But I came out of this game thinking that, honestly, they're probably the best Fire Emblem protagonist of at least the last decade. They're a fleshed out character with relatable motivations, good chemistry with the existing cast, and interesting growth. They're not just a silent avatar for the player to control. I enjoyed playing as them a lot more than I ever did Byleth. My only real issue with this game's story is the ending. There are threads that are set up that just aren't followed through, things teased throughout that never get resolved, and the ending of the conflict itself falls a little flat. It feels like there will probably be some DLC to clear up some of these problems, but needing DLC for that is never good. Still, Three Hopes has the wonderful cast in a world of Three Houses, with a protagonist in conflict that I vastly preferred that of the original game. While I struggled to stay interested in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity throughout the duration of its 20-hour campaign, which told a painfully mediocre tale, I was fully engaged with Three Hopes for more than twice as long, doing all the side content I could and eagerly anticipating every new cutscene. The story wasn't the only thing that kept me interested though. The combat in Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes is very similar to that of the first Fire Emblem Warriors. It's your standard Musou fare, taking on thousands of enemies and capturing bases are always the goal. But, like with the first Fire Emblem Warriors title, strategy plays a much more crucial role here. To make the most of each battle, you'll need to carefully consider the placement of every one of your units. You can switch between them at the press of a button, and from the pause menu, you can give them instructions using a Fire Emblem style grid-based map of the current area. While the amount of time you'll have to spend positioning units while paused can get a bit annoying, having to think that much more during Warriors combat makes it a lot more enjoyable and a lot more engaging. But what makes 3 Hopes stand so much higher than its predecessor is its character building. Like in 3 Houses, you'll spend your time between battles in an overworld area. You can interact with your allies, cook and clean to boost support points and get buffs, teach your units new strategies, do training and assign classes, and even more. Each character is also given many skills like in 3 Houses, and instead of having each character play differently, this game has all of the classes seen in 3 Houses equipped with a different playstyle. The class system here works just about the same as it did in 3 Houses, allowing for diverse playstyles and more complex development. Teaching every character multiple classes to get their new skills and make them as strong as they can be is still very satisfying. There is a lot to think about both inside of and outside of battle. So many skills, class options, weapon choices, support conversations based on relationships that can be boosted during and between combat. It links the life sim elements with the character progression in a very clever way, just as 3 Houses did, which makes pursuing either feel incredibly rewarding, and leads to a super satisfying and addictive gameplay loop. With its epic story, strategic gameplay, and deep character building, this Warriors spin-off feels like a genuine Fire Emblem game through and through. Sadly, that extends to the visuals as well. 3 Houses is, in my opinion, one of the worst looking games Nintendo's put out on the Switch, and 3 Hopes looks very, very similar. There are some improvements. Support conversations take place in 3D environments instead of awkwardly warped JPEGs. The cutscenes no longer look like they're running at 3 frames per second. But the environments still look pretty rough, and the fruit is just as polygonal as ever. The performance has never been great for the Musou games on Switch, and 3 Hopes is sadly no different. It peaks at 30 frames per second, and often dips below that. However, compared to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, this game is, at the very least, a lot more stable. It never dips to single-digit frame rates. It's not great, but it's not too distracting, and it's probably the smoothest we'll ever see a Warriors title run on this console. At least the character models here still look pretty good, and the aesthetic is greatly bolstered by the game's wonderful soundtrack. It takes the already fantastic soundtrack of 3 Houses and throws in some electric guitars and some fancy remixes to make it fit a Warrior-style game, and it sounds great. It's catchy, the remixes are different enough while still being recognizable, it complements the gameplay well, the soundtrack is pretty much everything you could ask for from this kind of game. Ultimately, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes really surprised me. I was not a huge fan of the original Fire Emblem Warriors, nor was I particularly fond of Nintendo's last Musou crossover endeavor in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. But this game has excellent combat that brilliantly blends the strategy of Fire Emblem with the satisfying power trip offered by Dynasty Warriors. This game has an amazing soundtrack that fans of 3 Houses are sure to love. This game has a wonderful cast of characters that are all very well fleshed out. And, best of all, this game has a story that I'd argue surpasses that of the Nintendo title it's based on. In an astounding amount of ways, 3 Hopes is as good as, if not better than, the already fantastic 3 Houses. This is by far my favorite Musou title, and it may even be the Switch's best Fire Emblem. Thank you guys for watching this video, I really appreciate it. If you liked it, I'd also really appreciate it if you liked, commented, hit the notification bell, and or subscribed. I'd also recommend you check out some of my other content like my review of the new Mario Strikers. If you want to see additional updates throughout the channel, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, or join my Discord server, all linked in the description below. Thank you all for watching, have a great rest of your day.